How would you finish this sentence? Life is... Life is. Well, there's some famous people that have coined some phrases. Forrest Gump said, Mama always said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Here's a video of Nacho Libre. You know Nacho Libre? Well, watch this video. This is what he says about life.
Really good. I get to wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and make some soup. It's the best. I love it.
So his life is good. It's really good. 1946, we all know this movie starring Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed. It tells us that life is wonderful. It's a wonderful life. But how would you finish the sentence? Maybe you might say life is short. You might say life is a rat race. How many of you think that sometimes? Nobody? Oh, just a few of you. Okay. Life is a bowl of cherries. What does that mean? It just means that life is just all fun, right? Life is what you make of it. I've heard this many times. I don't believe it because you can try to make your life whatever you want it to be, but it doesn't always turn out the way you want it to be. Life is a party. I know people who live that kind of life. They just think life is just one big party. They're never serious about anything. Life is just a big party. I think too often our answers seem to limit life. When we stop and think about it, when we try to coin a phrase, we try to make sense of life, we try to define life, we sort of limit really what life is. And I think that's because our perspective is limited. Did you know that the African impala can jump as high as 10 feet? I'm trying to give a reference here. Maybe to halfway up a TV screen there. They can jump as high as 10 feet, and they can jump as far across as 30 feet. That's from more than one end of the stage to the other. That's how far they can jump, and it's how high they can jump. And yet, if you go to a zoo and you see an impala, they're kept in a pen with a wall that's only about 3 feet high. Now, how do they do that? How do they keep those impalas in that pen? The reason is an impala will not jump unless it can see where it's going to land. They have zero faith. Faith is the ability to trust what we cannot see. And with faith, we are free from the flimsy enclosures of life that only fear allows to entrap us. Life is difficult, to be sure. Anyone who tells you that life is not difficult is a liar. But can life be difficult and wonderful at the same time? Absolutely. And here we see in John chapter 10, John recorded Jesus talking about life, true life. He called it life abundantly, or abundant life. Now, just to do a little bit of background, last week, Jesus healed a man who was born blind. The Pharisees interrogated this man over and over. You can read that in chapter 9. he responds with, and I love this, he says, why do you want to know him, so much about him? Do you want to be his disciples too? You can imagine they got irritated by that. They got so mad that they cast him out of the temple, and then later Jesus went and he found him. And Jesus then reveals to him that he is the Son of Man. Then the man begins to worship him. And Jesus is having a conversation with this man when there is an audience that gathers. The audience included the blind man, some Pharisees, and others. And that's the background. And now we come to chapter 10, where Jesus talks about this abundant life that he offers. He talks about the way to abundant life. And I've titled this message today, The Excessive Life. Now, I know some of you are going to push back on this, like no one should live an excessive life. But bear with me, and we'll see if we can make sense of it. First, I want you to look at John chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. Interesting there that he calls out thieves and robbers. I'll be honest with you, I really didn't know what the difference is. I think a thief is a robber and a robber is a thief, right? But in the context, and these words in the Greek actually have some specific meaning. A thief is someone who comes and steals in stealth. He is a conniving guy who steals. He might have a welcoming face, and he's telling you he is your friend, but behind your back, he steals from you. It's stealth. That's where the word stealth comes from. It's two English words, steal and ith. Stealeth, stealth. Okay, so when you're talking about stealth, it's someone who is stealing from you in secret. On the other hand, a robber is someone who is blatant. He's in your face. He comes up to you and says, hey, I'm going to steal from you. And he takes it from you. Broad daylight, blatant, everyone watching. He doesn't care. He will resort to violence if he has to steal. He's not going to beat around the bush. He's not going to mess around. He's just going to steal from you. So Jesus is calling out both types of thieves. The thief who comes in the night, the thief who comes and is in stealth and secret, and the one who is open and blatant. Now, in this story, this is a metaphor, and in this metaphor, there are actors. So you have the sheep pen, which is an object. You have the thieves and the robbers. You have the door. You have the shepherd. You have the gatekeeper. And then you have the sheep. And we're going to get into that in just a little bit as we uncover this story, as we unpack it. Now, we looked at this passage last year. I don't know if you remember that. Do you remember we looked at this passage last year? How many of you remember? It was about this time last year. I was still new, and you guys were smiling like, yes, Pastor, yes, Pastor. You know, like you were encouraging me. We were still in the honeymoon stage. Remember that? Well, how they built this sheep pen, if you remember, is they took rocks from the field and they gathered them up. And I got some pictures of it. Let me show them to you. You may remember seeing this. They gather up these rocks from the field and they make these pens. And you notice there's only one way in and one way out, and it's rather narrow. It's not like a wide open space. It's pretty narrow opening. Jesus, he uses this sheep pen. Now, everyone who was listening to him would have been very familiar with this. They would have seen this, and they would know about it. And so when he said sheepfold, they were, yeah, aha, I know exactly what you were talking about. So Jesus, he uses this sheep pen as a metaphor to describe the abundant life that he offers. Notice there's only one way in and one way out. And then he says about the robbers in verse 1, he says that there are those who try to find their own way in and out. False teachers, maybe. People that have come before him. He says that there is a right way to go in and out of the pen, and there's a wrong way to go in and out of the pen. Now, I used to think, when I read this and studied it, I used to think that the pen was the church. And no one can come into the church except they come through Jesus. I used to think that the pen was salvation, that no one can have salvation unless they go through Jesus. But I've taken on a little bit of a different understanding, having studied this further. But let's just kind of break down the metaphor and the objects and the actors in this story. The sheep pen, I believe, is the world that we live in. And the reason I say that it's not the church or it's not those who are saved is because Jesus later on talks about how some sheep will hear his voice. Those are his sheep. His own sheep will hear his voice. But then there are other sheep in that pen that they don't hear his voice. So the sheep pen is not salvation or the church, but the sheep pen is the world that we live in. Then you have the thieves and the robbers. Those are the false teachers, and perhaps he's making reference to the kings that led God's people astray. Then you have the door. The door is God's provision to freedom. But I want you to sort of get this idea, where in this story is the salvation experience? Is it in the pen or is it outside the pen? Bear with me, okay, because we're going to get there. So you have the door. That's God's provision to freedom or salvation. Then you have the shepherd, who is the guardian. He's the one who leads the sheep to green pastures. And then you have the gatekeeper, and this is one who knows the shepherd. He knows and he identifies with, he knows who the shepherd is. Then you have the sheep. You and I are the sheep. There are lost sheep, and there are found sheep. Or in Christianese, we'd say saved sheep, right? So then he says in verse 3 and 4, to him the gatekeeper opens, the sheep hear his voice, talking about the shepherd. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A couple of things there. The sheep hear his voice. When's the last time you heard God speak to you? When's the last time you opened your Bible and you read it and you just knew that God was speaking to you? When's the last time you sat and listened to a message or a sermon and you knew through the Holy Spirit, you knew that was for you? His sheep hear his voice. Next thing I want you to notice that he calls him. This word for call is not a, hey, you, come here. The word here means invitation. He invites you and me. He invites you to come along with him. He's not the kind of God who says, hey, you get over here. How many times do I have to tell you, get over here? He's the kind of God that says, come on, go with me. Come on, let's go. It's very inviting. By the way, moms and dads, the way you talk to your children is how they are going to perceive their spiritual father talks. So if you're always telling your kids, hey, you, do this. Hey, you, get over here. Sit down. Shut up. They're going to grow up thinking that that's how God is. And when they're old enough to get away from it, they're gone. He calls them by name. Now, for this exercise, I asked Silda to wear her fluffy sweater. No, it was just coincidence. She kind of looks like, what color is that? Pink? Purple? What is it? Purple. She's a purple sheep. So, if you had a sheep, a pet sheep, what would you name your pet sheep? What would you? Huh? What? Silda. Okay. Yeah. Okay. How about Fluffy? Fluffy Silda. Okay. How about Woolly? You know, for wool? You know, you get it? Okay. I'm sorry I had to explain that. How about Barbara? Or Barack, right? So all kinds of fun names for sheep. But point is, he knows all of his sheep by name. Don't miss this. If you miss everything else that I say this morning, don't miss this. Go home with at least this. He knows your name. You feel like you're all alone in this world. You feel like that there is no one who cares. He does. He knows your name. The other thing that he shows there is that he leads them out. This is a great picture. It's a beautiful picture of the true gospel, the true message of the gospel. He leads them out and in, and they go with him. It says that he goes before them. He's walking ahead of them, and he's saying, come on, it's okay. It's okay. Come on. And you can go to where Jesus is, and he walks a little bit further, and you realize there is not any place that Jesus invites you to come where he hasn't already been. Jesus is not the kind of leader that stands at the top of the hill and sends his warriors into battle. He's the kind of leader that is out front carrying the banner and inviting you to come along with him. The other thing you want to notice there is that his sheep follow him. He said that the sheep who know the voice of that shepherd, they follow him. So if you are his sheep, that is, if you are God's sheep, you will follow God. If you belong to Jesus, you will follow Jesus. If he tells you to be baptized, you will want to be baptized. You wouldn't care about the water, how cold it is, how hot it is, and how that white, almost see-through material might stick to you. You don't care about that. You'll be baptized. If he tells you to make disciples, you will be saying, you'll be asking, sign me up. Where do I sign up? Because you know his voice. You know his voice because you are his sheep. The problem today is this word follow. It's such a problem today because, and I say the millennial generation and younger, and even some of us who are older, we have gotten to where we don't really understand this word follow. You know why? Because follow, the word follow has become such a diluted word. I want to show you something. Well, just tell you about something. The top 5 Facebook followers. In other words, these are the top 5 people who have the most followers. Cristiano Ronaldo, I have no idea who that is. Anybody know? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for enlightening me. You should be more in the Word and less in the world. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. So he has 122 million followers. Shakira, she has 104.6 million followers. Vin Diesel, now I know Vin Diesel. He has 101 million followers. Eminem. I mean, I like M&Ms, but I think this is a different Eminem, right? Eminem has 90 million followers. Leo Messi, who's that? Another soccer player. Whoa, soccer's really popular. Okay. 89 million. Michael Jackson. He's been gone how many years? Longer. He has still 75 million followers. Apparently, he's able to have a Facebook page wherever he is. Top 5 Twitter followers. Barack Obama, 113 million. Justin Bieber, 109 million. Katy Perry, 108 million. Rihanna, 96 million. And Taylor Swift, 86 million. Donald Trump doesn't even make the top 5. He's number 9. He's number 9 at 72 million. So understand this. Understand that when you follow someone on social media, you're seeing a snapshot of their lives. You don't, you're seeing the best of them for the most part. I mean, some people put their stupid stuff on, but you're not really following them. But I think in some ways we kind of follow Jesus in the same way. Oh, let me see what he's tweeted today. Do I want to mess with that today? Do I want to look on his page today, or You go to the dentist office, you're bored, you're sitting there in the waiting room. Okay, let me see what Jesus has to say. Right? I'm going to kill some time. See, that's the problem, is we've gotten to where the word follow really is diluted, and it means nothing like it did in the days of Jesus. So when Jesus said, in contrast, when he goes before them and they follow him, the word is not just click with the mouse or with our thumbs, follow. The word is accompany him. You can't really follow Jesus unless you accompany him and he accompanies you. That's what it means to follow Jesus. You go where he leads you. You let him lead you to places you've never been before. And you lead him, or he leads you to do things you never dreamed possible. You won't your family restored, follow Jesus. He will lead you to things to do, to say, to be. And He will restore your family in a way that you never in your wildest imaginations dreamed it would be possible. Because when He restores, it's not back to where it was. When He restores, it's all the way to what it was intended to be before you messed it up. So then we come to verse 5. Verse 5 says, a stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus said with them, but they did not understand what He was saying to them. And to that I say, yes, we can't understand either. As long as we have the Impalas faith, the Impalas perspective. We can't understand unless the Spirit reveals it to us. So Jesus, He goes another round with this, and He's unveiling more of His truth in verse 7. So Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. Verse 9. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The word for door here, it means door or it means gate, but it also means opportunity. So change it out a little bit. Jesus saying to you, I am your opportunity. Opportunity for what? Jesus is your opportunity to be saved. But not only to be saved, but He is your opportunity to go in and out and find pasture. You know what? If you were a sheep, Zelda can tell you this. If you were a sheep, right, Zelda? There's nothing more exciting. There's nothing more inviting. There's nothing more fulfilling than green pastures. Oh, yeah. You know, that's like a guy going into Best Buy or Home Depot. That's like Donna going into Joann's or Michael's, or sitting in front of the TV and watching the Hallmark Channel. Oh, for the sheep, there's nothing better than green pasture. But look what Jesus says is that He leads you and me, He leads His sheep out to green pastures. You see, we think that wall that was created to protect the sheep, we think that that's as good as it gets. We're safe. We're not taking any chances. We're protected. And we think that that is freedom. But freedom is being able to go outside that doorway, outside that gate, which Jesus is the door. Jesus is the gate. Jesus is the opportunity for us to go out as He leads us and as He protects us and as He guides us and guards us, for us to be able to go out and find green pastures. This word for pasture metaphorically means increase, growth. It is out where there are no walls. It is out where there is danger. It is out where there is no wall of protection that God grows us and matures us. So when you follow Jesus, when you accompany him, that fellowship, not fellowship, fellowship leads to spiritual growth. It leads to maturity. And it increases your faith. Not like the impala who is content with staying in the pen. If I were your enemy, if I was your enemy, if I was your adversary, I would not want you to know this. I would not want you to take a chance with Jesus. I would want you to believe that what the world has to offer you is as good as it gets. I would want you to not listen to Jesus. I would want to keep you in a cage, in a pen. Because once you taste true freedom in Jesus Christ, freedom from sin, freedom from false beliefs, freedom from the confines of this world, this pen, I would not want you to know that there is freedom right outside that gate. So in case they missed it, Jesus says this in verse 10. The thief, he comes only to steal and kill and destroy, but I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. This word abundantly, perisos, it means more. It means greater. It means excessive. It means, in a noun form, preeminence or advantage. Let me close with this story. About 20 years ago, we got a dog for our youngest son. She was a Jack Russell Terrier. We called her Zoe, which in the Greek, it means life. Every time we sat at the dinner table to eat, Zoe was on a mission. Zoe loved to scour the floor underneath, just hoping that someone would accidentally or on purpose drop a little morsel, a little crumb of something. And she would scour that floor looking for those crumbs. And she apparently enjoyed it. She did a lot. It's not like we didn't feed her, okay? It's not like that's all she got. She got her food. But she just loved to do that. And it's like, this is good. This is good stuff. I often wondered what would happen if I reached down and picked her up and put her on the table with all the fixings, okay, of a southern meal. We're talking country fried steak. We're talking black-eyed peas, cornbread. Oh, I'm getting hungry. We're talking, that's the spread. We're talking a table full of food, a feast. And I pick her up and I put her right in the middle of the table. What do you think will happen? There would be a moment of stare, like she would be looking at me as her master, and I'd be looking at her, and she'd be like, is this okay? Can I? You know? But then once she knew that she could dig into it, it's like a 1-year-old who has a birthday party, right? And that whole cake thing. And once they dig into it, it's like game's over. It would be like that, okay? Because where before she was underneath the table and waiting for the droppings, and then she was content with that, now for the first time in her life, she sees where that is coming from. And it is good. It is those little crumbs times gazillion, right? I mean, there is no end to her feast. But that's where most Christians are. Most Christians are under the table, like Zoe. Most Christians are in the pen, safe, no risk. And what Jesus is saying in this story is, I want to lead you. I want to lead you into blessing. I want to lead you into green pastures. I want you to experience true freedom. I want you to feast in my blessing. That's what he means when he says, I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly. That's what Jesus is saying. Now we're going to close right now. We're going to sing a song, and we're going to do something that we don't do often here. But I want you to just right now bow your heads and close your eyes. And we're going to sing this song. I just have to believe that there are men and women, that there are teenagers, there are young people in this room, that you have spent almost your entire life in the pen. That you never took a risk with God. You believe in Him. Best you know, you love Him. The best you are able to, you love Him. But you're like that impala. You've never taken a leap of faith to trust Him when He says, I've come that you may have life and have it abundantly. I'm going to give you a chance to respond. I'm going to ask you, in a moment we're going to stand up and sing. I want to ask you to come forward, and I want to ask you to maybe kneel at the altar here and surrender your life to the Lord in a whole new way, to trust Him. Let Him lead you out of the pen into green pastures. Let Him lead you to opportunities. Let Him lead you to His dream and His desire and His vision for you. Let Him guide you. He's calling you. Come on. Go with me. Let me show you how great your life can be. Let's stand and sing. And if you sense God calling you, I don't care if you've been here for 20, 30, 40 years. I don't care if you've been in the church all that time. But in a fresh, in a new way, God calling you and you saying, yes, Lord. You let that be known. Don't be ashamed of that fellowship with Jesus. You come forward. Let people know that's who you are. Father, I pray that you will draw those who are lost to the cross, those who are saved back to the cross, those who have been stuck in a pen to be set free, that they would have the courage to walk through that gate as they hear you call. In Jesus' name, I pray.